I can still remember the feeling of packaging it up, putting it in a post box, and then thinking, how can I break this post box open and get it back out? I'm so embarrassed. Hi, my name is Tegan Bennett Daylight. My new book is called How to Survive 1985. It's out now. It's published by Simon & Schuster. It's about 6 teenagers who are transported from 2025 back to 1985. They're the same teenagers who were in my previous YA book, Royals. So How to Survive 1985 is a standalone book, but it calls on the same characters who've already had this experience of being in a parallel universe. I was interested in writing it because I'm from 1985, and naturally growing up with kids who are now in their 20s, I've really noticed things changing, and it was a way of sort of recording that and letting my 1985 self be in 2025 but then go back again. The characters are Western Sydney kids. The main character is Shannon. She, in the new book, is, I think she's 16 or 17, and she is a very politically correct, genderqueer, but very anxious kind of a character, but she's also very funny and sharp and smart. And her co-royals, I still call them royals because that's what they were, are Tiana, Grace, Akira, James, and Juno the baby. So every time they go into a new world, they all go together, but you see everything from Shannon's point of view. So I actually got the main idea by going to my oldest child, Charlie, and saying, if you got suddenly sent back to 1985, what would you do? And they said, I would look for you. I was so thrilled, so thrilled. So I thought, okay, that's what Shannon is like. She is an anxious character. She figures out she's in 1985. And the first thing she does is she crosses the river. She goes over the city, crosses the river to find her mother in the house that her mother grew up in. Throughout the whole time of having kids, my partner and I have watched a lot of change happening, and a lot of good change. I think it's really common for Gen Xers like me to say, oh, things were better, and to forget that everybody says that. Everybody says, oh, when I was a kid. But one of the things we've always noticed and always pointed out to our kids is that when we watch TV, for instance, we see queer characters, we see people with disabilities, we see people of colour. It is a very, very different space. And so the kind of subtitle of the book is A Better World, because that's what we always used to say to our kids. It's a better world. In many ways, it's a better world. So I'm sort of interested in that, but I'm also interested in how the ways in which 2025 is a worse world. I mean, we have Trump, we have climate change, we have Palestine, we still have homophobia, racism, sexism, violence against women. Those things still exist, but it's partly also because I'm a university lecturer and I've been teaching since the mid-90s. So I've seen successive generations of young people. I've always worked with young people. And as time goes on, they become more and more tolerant, kinder, more generous, more inclusive and open with each other. It feels to me like there's been a lot of changes for good. And I guess I really want to say that to young readers. It's very common for them to feel as though they've been born into a world that's collapsing. And it's very easy for Gen Xers to kind of maintain that idea. And I don't think it's completely true. So that's sort of what I'm writing about. I'm using my characters to think about their time and to think about the 80s and kind of notice the good differences and the bad differences. So obviously the good differences in the book, I have my characters noticing that they can do things that they don't necessarily want to do, but they can smoke on public transport. That's not necessarily a good thing. But there's not bottled water everywhere. There's not so many people. There's not the psychic noise of phones. But they also notice a lot of racism. They notice that there are no ramps. There's no way for Jordan, the character with a disability, to get around. He would just be a shut-in 1985, and that's certainly my experience. Kids with disabilities were not visible for able-bodied people like me in the 80s. I have been in print since 1990. I was an early starter. So I was born in 1969. My first books, the little known thing, but I'm making it known now, is my first books were dolly fiction books. So they were teen romances. I went to uni with the sister of the then editor of Dolly magazine, and they just started this imprint and they needed writers. And so I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. So I wrote 5 of those. And my first kids' book was published by Random House in about 1991. And then I did another kids' book with them, and then I moved into adult fiction. I entered my first novel, Bombora, in the Australian Vogel Award for 1994. And I can still remember the feeling of packaging it up, putting it in a post box, and then thinking, how can I break this post box open and get it back out? I'm so embarrassed. But then I got shortlisted, and then it was published by Allen and Unwin, so that was a real sort of push for my career. Since then, 2 more novels, a collection of short stories, a collection of essays, Royals, the YA book, and its follow-on, How to Survive 1985. I'm not a writer who plans at all, so I never know what I'm going to do next. And I'd had this idea floating in my head for a long time. This is the plot of Royals, about kids who are stuck in a shopping centre in a mall. And it was rising to the top while COVID was happening, because not as bad as you guys, but we did have a lot of lockdowns. We had 3 teenagers in the house, and in a 3-bedroom house. So it was fairly intense. And I used to say to them, where would you go? What would you do if you could? And Penrith Plaza, which is the kind of first place for mountains kids. I live in the Blue Mountains. That's the first place they're allowed to go without adults. That was what they wanted. They wanted to be wandering the shops and to be checking each other out and buying bubble tea. And I woke up one morning with the idea really bubbling up high, and I said to my partner, I've got this idea about 6 kids trapped in a shopping centre, but I can't write it because it's YA. And he said, why not? You get these, one of the weird things about being a writer is you get these ideas where you think, but this is what I do. I don't do that. So now that was another relearning, that I just write what happens in my brain. So I'm writing YA at the moment. I've got a novel on the boil. It could be short stories. So yeah, that's my mode. It is a really common question. What do writers do and how do they do it? My experience is that it's very, very random. I used to, when I was in my 20s, I just sat up at night. I couldn't stop. So I was writing in the middle of the night. I was leaping up and writing things down. As you get a little bit older and I started to have kids, that's much less possible. I did find for quite a long time that the kids seemed to colonize the creative part of me. Not in a way that I felt resentful of, but it was just that all the invention was with them, you know. So I did find it hard to get the time. But again, it wasn't through actual lack of time. I've got a really supportive partner. It was through lack of creative space. And these days, it's taken me 40 years or however long it's taken me to actually start a proper practice. So 500 words every morning. You're not allowed to look at your email or your phone until you've written your 500 words, and then you can do what you like. That's my rule. What item do you lose most often? Oh, come on, everybody has to say the same thing. My phone. I never know where my damn phone is. I never know. I was on the plane to Melbourne just this morning, and I put my phone somewhere, and then I thought, I don't know where my phone is. And I was like, well, I'm in an aeroplane. it can't have gone far. It's not like I left it in another room. It's somewhere upon my person, but happens all the time. I'm constantly getting the kids to ring the phone so I can find it. I lose it all the time. Writing is meant to illuminate the human condition rather than try to correct it. That's one of my feelings about it. But to me, the most important thing about being a writer, particularly now, is community. When you write books, you're actually writing to people. You're writing letters, and when they read, sometimes they write letters back to you. So it's not just fostering a reading community, which is obviously important to me, but more it's just a sense of we're speaking to each other. We're having conversations on the page. So to me, that's the role. It's I feel politically motivated, but not so much in the writing, just in myself. So I feel as though that comes across, but I don't really like to make lists of things that people should do. In fact, the YA books are a really great place to have that argument with myself. So I find myself doing a lot of, there's a couple of really right-on kids in the group of kids that I'm writing about, and they're arguing with the less right-on kids. So there's this kind of clash of, oh my God, why are you bringing that up again? And how can you be so sexist? Those sorts of things. So the argument is kind of played out. So yeah, reading is for making friends, I think. Well, I still have it. My mum kept it. Two important things. One was a book that she bought me, an exercise book when I was 5 or 6. And I had a series of stories, and they were all called When I Was A. So I had When I Was a Giraffe, When I Was a Leopard, When I Was a... So it was a series, But the other thing I can really remember, and it's partly because my mum also kept this, was that at about that age, I wrote to Elizabeth Beresford, who wrote The Wombles. You might remember The Wombles. I think you do. I loved The Wombles, and there was a TV show as well, but I was a huge reader, so I was reading a lot of The Wombles. So I wrote to Elizabeth Beresford when I was 6, I think, 6 or 7, to suggest some plots for her and, tell her how great the books were, but also to give her some ideas of where to go next. And she wrote back. So I still have an Elizabeth Beresford piece of paper. She had a letterhead that said The Wombles, and it was made of ripped up bits of newspaper, so each letter was pasted out of a newspaper. It was incredible. And she said, "Thank you so much for your ideas. I'm going to do this next. I'm so glad you like the books," that kind of thing. But she was beautifully pitched. It was such a lovely letter. Yeah. So that's been my thing, firing off letters. Yeah, there's never a single one, is there? So, and I'm always asking students this, so I really should have an answer prepared. But I would say the author that comes most to mind, because I was reading her between the ages of about 8 and kind of now, I still have a look at them, still, is Joan Aiken. She's a British author, so maybe close to your heart as well. So the James III series were just hugely important to me. Such a strong female character in Dido. Yes, absolutely true, but I didn't think about it. It was more just that I wanted to be her. I used to play her all the time. And that series, Wolves of Willoughby Chase, Black Hearts in Battersea, The Cuckoo Tree, Nightbirds on Nantucket was my favourite one for a long time. But then I really loved The Cuckoo Tree, The Stolen Lake. Those are books that are really deeply literary. The language is really complex, but they're so inventive and wild. They do what I'm trying to do in my YA, I guess, which is everything's rooted in the real world, but there's magical elements. Yeah, so those are books that I've still got my early copies. My next project, well, as I said, I don't make plans except to when people suggest ideas to me to say, no, I'm not going to do that. So when my sister said to me, you're going to write a sequel to Royals, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. But then the idea turned up. So I'm not going to write a trilogy, but I appear to be writing a trilogy. So there's another book in the Royals series. I think it will be the last book, but I could be lying. And yeah, I've got like I said, a novel boiling away in the background as well. It's a real pleasure. It's lovely to be at the Leaf Bookshop.